Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it. The bustling city streets were a symphony of sounds, honking horns, distant laughter, and the rhythmic clatter of footsteps against the pavement. As I navigated my way through the crowd, my mind was preoccupied with the mundane details of another busy day at the notary office. I prided myself on my efficiency and professionalism, traits that had earned me a reputation in the legal community. Yet it was on this seemingly ordinary day that my life would take an unexpected turn. I first saw the boy as I exited the office building, a thin figure with tousled hair and a smudge of dirt on his cheek. He couldn't have been more than 10 or 11, and his clothes were worn and patched. He was selling sweets from a small wooden box, his eyes wide and hopeful as he approached passersby. I watched as he was repeatedly ignored or brushed off with indifference. "Would you like to buy some sweets, sir?" the boy asked as I walked past him, his voice a mixture of hope and desperation. I was in a hurry, my mind already on my next appointment. "No, thank you," I replied curtly, not even glancing in his direction. "Please, sir," he persisted, stepping closer. "Just one sweet. It's for my family." I stopped and turned to face him, irritation flaring up inside me. "I said no," I snapped. "Go find somewhere else to bother people." The boy's face fell, and he mumbled an apology before retreating into the crowd. I brushed off the encounter and continued on my way, unaware of the significance this brief interaction would soon hold. Later that evening, as I sat in my dimly lit apartment, I couldn't shake the image of the boy's defeated expression from my mind. The next morning, I received an unexpected letter from an old friend, Logan Goodwin. We hadn't spoken in years. The letter was brief, filled with desperation and a plea for help. Logan's son, Hugo, had been missing for 3 years. My heart sank as I read Logan's words. He had been searching tirelessly, his life consumed by the hunt for his missing child. I felt a pang of guilt. Logan had reached out to me before, but I had been too absorbed in my own affairs to respond. I picked up the phone and dialed Logan's number. He answered on the first ring, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "Logan, it's Jensen. I received your letter. I want to help." There was a pause, and then Logan spoke, his voice breaking. "Jensen, thank you. I didn't know who else to turn to." "Of course, Logan, I'll help you. Send me the last photo you have of Hugo on your phone." 5 minutes later, I received a photograph of Hugo on my phone. When I saw the photo, it seemed to me that I saw this boy, but a little older. This is not surprising, since 3 whole years have passed. After all, this boy was selling sweets near my office this morning. A cold shiver ran down my spine. The boy selling sweets flashed in my mind. Could it be? Determined to right my wrongs, I set out early the next morning to find the boy I had so harshly dismissed. The streets were quieter, the hustle and bustle of daily life not yet in full swing. My mind raced with possibilities. What if he had moved on to another corner? What if I never saw him again? Pushing these thoughts aside, I focused on the task at hand. I retraced my steps to Baker Street, my eyes scanning every corner and alleyway. As I approached the spot where I had seen him, my heart leaped. There he was, huddled in the same threadbare coat, clutching his basket of sweets. He looked even smaller and more fragile in the early morning light. "Hugo," I called out, my voice softer this time. The boy looked up, startled. His eyes widened with recognition, and he seemed ready to flee. I quickly raised my hands, palms out in a gesture of peace. "Wait, don't go. I'm not here to chase you away. I want to help." Hugo hesitated, his eyes darting between me and the street behind him, as if weighing his chances of escape. "I'm a friend of your father's," I said, taking a cautious step closer. "Logan Goodwin. He's been looking for you for 3 years." The mention of his father's name seemed to pierce through Hugo's defenses. His posture relaxed slightly, and he eyed me with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "You're really his friend?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes, I am, and I'm truly sorry for how I treated you yesterday. I didn't recognize you then, but now, please, let me help you." Hugo's eyes filled with tears, and he nodded slowly. I reached out and gently took his small, cold hand in mine. "Let's get you somewhere warm," I said softly. "We can talk more there." We walked together to my office, Hugo's hand gripping mine tightly as if afraid I might disappear. Once inside, I gave him a warm blanket and a cup of hot chocolate. He sipped it cautiously, his eyes never leaving mine. I was so scared, he finally said, his voice trembling. I didn't know if I'd ever find my dad again. You don't have to be scared anymore, Hugo, I reassured him. We're going to find your father. Together. As Hugo relaxed and started to trust me, I felt a deep sense of purpose and determination. This boy needed me, and I was going to do everything in my power to reunite him with Logan. With Hugo now safe in my office, I picked up the phone and dialed Logan's number. The phone barely rang before Logan's anxious voice answered. Logan, it's Jensen. I have Hugo with me. He's safe, I said, my voice filled with relief. There was a moment of stunned silence before Logan spoke, his voice choked with emotion. You found him? Oh, thank God. Jensen, where are you? I'll come right away. I gave him the address, and within what felt like minutes, the door burst open, and Logan rushed in. His eyes locked onto Hugo, and in an instant, they were in each other's arms, clinging to one another as if afraid to let go. Dad? Hugo's voice was a mixture of disbelief and joy. Yes, son, it's me. I'm here, Logan said, his voice breaking as he held his son tightly. I've been searching for you for so long. Hugo's initial hesitation melted away as he buried his face in his father's chest, sobbing. Logan held him close, his own tears flowing freely. I'm so sorry, Hugo. I'm so sorry I couldn't find you sooner, Logan whispered, his voice thick with guilt and sorrow. It's okay, Dad. I knew you'd find me, Hugo replied, his small hands gripping his father's coat. I watched the reunion, my own eyes misting over. This was the moment they had both been waiting for, a moment of profound emotional healing. After a while, Logan looked up at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. Thank you, Jensen. I don't know how I can ever repay you. No need for repayment, Logan, I said, my voice gentle. Seeing you two together is enough. Just promise me you'll take care of him. I will. I swear I will, Logan vowed, holding Hugo even tighter. As the two of them sat together, sharing their relief and love, I felt a sense of fulfillment wash over me. I had played a part in reuniting a father with his son, and it was a feeling unlike any other. The next morning, I awoke with a sense of purpose that had long been absent from my life. After a quick breakfast, I headed to Logan's apartment, my mind racing with plans to help him and Hugo. As I reached the modest building, I couldn't help but reflect on the years that had passed since Logan and I had last spoken. Logan opened the door before I had a chance to knock, his face a mixture of exhaustion and relief. Jensen, come in, he said, stepping aside to let me enter. Hugo was sitting at the small kitchen table, his eyes wary but curious. Logan motioned for me to sit, and I joined them, the weight of the situation settling over us. I still can't believe it's really him, Logan said, his voice filled with wonder as he looked at his son. I've been searching for so long. I know, I replied, meeting Hugo's gaze. And now that we've found him, we need to make sure he stays safe. Logan nodded, his expression turning serious. I've been thinking about what to do next. Hugo needs stability, and I want to give him a proper home, but my financial situation is complicated. We'll figure it out, I said firmly. I have some connections that might be able to help, and I'll do everything I can to support you both. Hugo shifted in his seat, his eyes flickering between us. What's going to happen to me now? He asked quietly. Logan reached across the table, taking his son's hand in his. You're staying with me, Hugo. We'll find a way to make this work. I promise. We spent the next few hours discussing the logistics of Hugo's new life. Logan revealed the struggles he had faced since his marriage fell apart, losing his job, battling depression, and the overwhelming guilt of not being able to find Hugo sooner. I listened, offering what support I could, while also formulating a plan to help them both rebuild their lives. As the afternoon wore on, I excused myself to make a few phone calls. I reached out to an old colleague, a social worker named Claire, who agreed to meet with us the following day to discuss Hugo's situation. I also contacted a friend in the legal field who might be able to assist with any custody issues that could arise. Returning to the apartment, I found Logan and Hugo deep in conversation, their bond strengthening with each passing moment, I couldn't help but smile, feeling a sense of hope for the first time in a long while. "We have a meeting with a social worker tomorrow," I announced, sitting back down at the table. "She'll help us figure out the next steps." Logan looked relieved, his shoulders sagging as the weight of uncertainty began to lift. "Thank you, Jensen. I don't know what we would have done without you." "You don't have to thank me," I said, shaking my head. "I'm just glad I can help." Hugo looked up, a small smile playing on his lips. "Thank you, Mr. Bolton," he said softly. "Call me Jensen," I replied, feeling a warmth spread through me at the boy's gratitude. "We're in this together." As I left the apartment that evening, I felt a renewed sense of determination. Reconnecting with Logan had been an unexpected twist in my life, but it was one I welcomed with open arms. The emotional reunion between Logan and Hugo left both of them feeling overwhelmed but hopeful. As they held each other tightly, the door to my office opened, and in walked Claire, the social worker I had contacted. Claire was a woman in her mid-30s, with a warm smile and a calm, professional demeanor that immediately put everyone at ease. "Logan, Hugo, this is Claire," I introduced, standing up to greet her. "She's here to help us navigate the next steps." Claire approached slowly, kneeling to Hugo's level to make herself less intimidating. "Hello, Hugo. It's nice to meet you," she said softly. "I'm here to make sure you and your dad can stay together and be safe." Hugo looked at her with wide eyes, a mixture of curiosity and apprehension. "Hi," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Claire smiled reassuringly. "I know this must be a lot to take in, but I'm here to help. Can I sit with you and your dad for a bit?" Logan nodded, pulling Hugo closer to him. "Of course, please." Claire sat down across from them, her gaze compassionate and understanding. "Logan, Hugo, the first thing I want you to know is that you're not alone in this. We have resources and support systems in place to help families like yours." Logan looked at her, his eyes filled with gratitude but also concern. "What do we need to do? How can we make sure Hugo stays with me?" Claire took a deep breath, her expression serious but kind. "We'll need to go through some legal procedures to establish your custody, Logan. Given Hugo's situation, we'd want to ensure everything is done correctly to avoid any future complications." Hugo looked up at his father, eyes wide and hopeful. "Does this mean I can go back to school, Dad?" Logan's eyes softened as he looked at his son. "Yes, Hugo. We'll make sure you get back to school and see your friends again." Claire smiled, her tone encouraging. "Exactly. And Hugo will also arrange for counseling to help you both adjust to this new chapter in your lives. It's important to have support as you transition back into a stable home environment." Claire stood up, pulling out a stack of forms from her briefcase. "I'll start the paperwork for the temporary custody today and set up our next meeting to go over everything in detail. We'll also schedule the hearing to finalize the custody arrangement." Logan's relief was palpable as he nodded. "Thank you, Claire. We appreciate all your help." 10 days passed and the trial began. The courtroom was a tension-filled arena with Logan and I seated on one side and Hugo's maternal grandmother, Mrs. Caldwell, on the other. The stakes were high. This was the day that would determine Hugo's future. The judge, a stern woman with keen eyes, entered and took her seat. "We are here to determine the custody of Hugo Goodwin. Mr. Logan Goodwin, you may present your case." Logan stood, his hands trembling slightly. "Your Honor, 3 years ago, my son was taken from me. I've searched tirelessly for him, and when I finally found him, he was living on the streets. I want nothing more than to give Hugo a stable and loving home." Mrs. Caldwell's lawyer, a sharp-looking man, rose next. "Your Honor, my client believes Mr. Goodwin is unfit to care for Hugo. She has provided a stable environment since his mother passed away and believes it is in Hugo's best interest to remain with her." The judge nodded and turned her gaze to me. "Mr. Bolton, as a notary and close friend of Mr. Goodwin, what can you tell us about his ability to care for his son?" I took a deep breath and stood. "Your Honor, I've known Logan for years. He's a dedicated father who has made mistakes but is deeply committed to his son. Since finding Hugo, he has done everything in his power to ensure his well-being. Hugo's time on the streets was not a reflection of Logan's character, but a tragic result of unforeseen circumstances. The judge turned to Mrs. Caldwell. Mrs. Caldwell, why do you believe Hugo should stay with you? Mrs. Caldwell, an elderly woman with a steely demeanor, spoke with conviction. Hugo needs stability in a familiar environment. Logan has been absent for too long. My daughter would want Hugo to stay with family who can provide for him. The judge sighed and looked at Hugo, who was seated beside Logan. Hugo, would you like to say anything? Hugo stood, his voice shaking. I love my grandma, but I want to live with my dad. I know he made mistakes, but he's trying really hard. I believe in him. The courtroom fell silent as the judge considered the testimonies. After what felt like an eternity, she spoke. This is a difficult decision. While I understand the grandmother's concerns, I believe a child should be with his parent whenever possible. Therefore, I grant full custody of Hugo Goodwin to his father, Logan Goodwin. Logan exhaled in relief, tears streaming down his face. Thank you, Your Honor. Mrs. Caldwell's face fell, but she nodded, accepting the decision. Take good care of him, Logan, she said softly. I will, Logan promised, his voice choked with emotion. As we left the courtroom, I put a hand on Logan's shoulder. This is just the beginning, my friend. The road ahead won't be easy, but you're not alone. Logan nodded, holding Hugo's hand tightly. I know, and I'm ready for whatever comes next. Together, they walked out of the courthouse, stepping into a future filled with hope and the promise of new beginnings.